welcome everyone. It's Kristen from Still Small Voice, and I'm here with my friend Kimberly Thompson. We've been friends for a few years, and just like in previous months, I just wanted to take an opportunity to introduce you to some of the people who have just helped to shape me along the way. I feel like our friendship, Kimberly, I don't know if you'd agree, has been one of those things where we have learned from each other and encouraged each other through different things. So I would just love to get us started. Normally we would do this over coffee, like somewhere fun. Kimberly and I we like to go to really fun coffee places. We have found some really neat hole in the wall shops. Mansion in the wall. I guess it's a mansion in the wall. Anyway, but we love to do those kinds of things. But right now we're just going to do this and it's going to be fine. But anyway, I would just love to start off, Kimberly, if you would just tell us maybe a little bit about you and what you do.
Yeah. So I am a goldsmith. So I work right now, I'm in my studio and I basically make jewelry. I also am an educator. So I teach metalsmithing and jewelry making classes at local colleges. And hopefully at some point too, just small workshops or classes here inside the studio as well.
That's awesome. I can totally attest to her jewelry making skill. If you think making macaroni jewelry is the thing, it's not. I mean, if you're a mom and you have kids, great, that's cute. But for real jewelry, she made me this. You can't see it really well. It's my favorite piece of jewelry that I own. She custom made it for me. It's so beautiful. And also she tested out a workshop, sort of she came over to my house and my kid Oliver loves rocks. And so she taught him how to wrap a rock and make a pendant. That was super cool. You're really good. I love how you're kind of expanding and growing that. So
cool. And hopefully some kids classes too, because I feel there's a lot of cool things that they can get introduced to that I wish I had gotten introduced to earlier on. So
yeah. I mean, we just kind of go with the flow. I think life surprises us, what we end up doing and finding ourselves doing and what we really enjoy. So
no kidding.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about where you find inspiration for what you do. I don't know if a lot of people understand maybe what goldsmithing even is, except that now you just described that you basically make jewelry and but what inspires you?
I am inspired by, I think mostly just the creative process, just making things, because that's always been part of who I am. And just what it was that I was using to create was something different along the way. And now it just happens to be, mostly gold and silver. But I just get inspired by the problem solving that goes into the creative process, the inspiration from the supplies that you're pulling from, that sort of thing. If I had to say actual things that I'm inspired by, it would probably be history. I was trained as an art historian and did that for a while professionally. So a lot of ancient pieces that we have records of or that are still intact, that are we're using the same principles and fundamentals and skills and techniques that they were using thousands of years ago. And I think that's amazing. So it might be something like an ancient Roman ring, or maybe a bracelet from the Gothic period or something like that. So yeah.
That is just so neat. I don't know if I knew that you were an art historian before. I feel like maybe you've mentioned it in passing, or maybe I just thought you knew all these things because you were just a collector of knowledge.
Yeah. Well, and it's weird too. It'd be talking about you pre-children. It just feels like a completely different life, right?
Yes, it is.
So yeah, exactly.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, but I basic things I really like. You find a lot of, I use this medallion sort of piece repetitively in my work. And so that feels, to me, that feels old in a way that it's sort of like, again, just a medallion, right? To begin with. And then it's perfectly symmetrical. It's sort of a radial design. So I'm really into like texture and symmetry and pattern and that sort of thing. So I feel like that's a lot of what we see throughout history. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, it really is inspirational if you think about even just like architecture and art and how,
Exactly.
everything is just kind of, it's not repeated necessarily, not like there's nothing new. But
Yeah.
you see those repetitious patterns or those nods to the past.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like even in our faith, like we have an entire faith built on thousands of years of tradition and history and learning. And um,
Right.
it's just such a neat thing to know that in some way, shape, or form, what we do now, like in our discipleship or in our work or whatever, is just built on thousands of years of people doing the exact same thing in some form or fashion over the
Yeah.
years. That's what I love about trades like yours is it's just old and ancient, and it kind of feels neat to be kind of connected to the past. I bet that probably feels really cool.
Yeah. I like it. I feel like it's romanticizing it a little bit, because like my day to day isn't, but
Yeah.
it's fine. We'll go with that.
Yeah, let's go with that. But also, I mean, it's cool because like you're like, it's not the day to day, but like there's like math involved. I remember I was in your studio hanging out and you and your assistant were like trying to figure out like this math gauge, and you pulled out like books and you were looking at numbers and stuff.
Algebra. Yeah. And she was like devastated that she had to do math in order to figure out the size of her ring, but
Yeah.
that's the deal.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's cool that it kind of gives us a little bit of a sneak peek into what goes on behind the scenes in this highly romanticized process.
Right.
We look at the surface and we see this beautiful jewelry, and it's really glamorous to be working with metals and jewels. I mean, we've had so many conversations in the past about like when you lost like little teeny tiny jewels.
I drop things. Okay. That's the deal. That's my thing. I drop stuff.
Yeah.
Preferably it's not a diamond that's lost forever, but there might have been
Somebody
a
found it.
time.
I guarantee
It's
you.
fine. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, but like what I love about things like that is there's a behind the scene process that's going on
Yeah.
all the time. So like just like in our work, the same thing in our faith, like people look at, they look at pastors or authors or teachers, and they're like they have it all together, but like behind the scenes there's like math going on and reading and studying and lots of prayer and all those things. And I love getting to come into your studio and kind of watch that behind the scenes aspect of what you do, because I think it just makes what you do so much I don't know, it just feels like so much more robust to know that there's a whole process behind it. So
yeah. And I think, people forget that, or I guess sometimes just don't even realize that there's a person making this. We're so used to, especially in America, that we just get things that are produced on mass levels because we're such a consumer culture that I think a lot of times in our mind, we just think that there's like a machine just rolling these things out for us in multiples, as opposed to something that's made by hand, and that it's made by hands, right? That there's a human behind it, and they're the ones doing all of this, this labor to create something. And it's just like talking about somebody who is accomplished in their faith. I think we get caught up in the end product a lot. And we don't realize that there's either a human behind it, or that there's human trial behind it, or there's just this huge growing process or growth process that has led up to this point. It's just not this, because we think of things as so immediate now, as we consume so much, we're just used to having things at our fingertips all the time. And I think that we forget that things take time, and they should, and good things should take time, right? Like personal growth, that's not something that just you wake up one day and you're like, nailed it, it's hard work. Yeah.
It is hard work. It is hard work. And what I love about it is you appreciate it more when you've put that time, energy, and effort. And I think people appreciate it more too. I mean, there's a cost to the process in anything that we do. And I mean, I think we see that like when we buy something handmade versus buying something like online or on Amazon. Not that like you have a website online, but do you know what I mean? Like something mass produced. You know, I think we appreciate it more and we're willing to place a little bit more value in it when we know that there's a process attached to it and a person attached to it. So
yeah. And it's not to say like those other things are bad. If you're buying jewelry at Target or whatever, that's fine. If that's what suits you. You know, I can't compete with that type of thing. So that's not what I do. Right. But it takes all kinds.
I agree. What are some ways that you think your work is impacted by your faith? I know we've talked a little bit about it, just kind of back and forth, but what do you think has been the most impactful thing about like being a Jesus follower and also being a goldsmith?
I think for me, just having revealed to me God's plan and how different it is generally from the plan that I make for myself. So I, you know, for the most part, I'm self-taught. I went into this sort of as a hobby and it evolved into, again, that evolution was a very long process. And fast forward, long story, boring, I'm here doing this now. Right. But I think in the midst of this, I've become a teacher. I was a teacher before, obviously, but I never thought I would be teaching what I do too. And so that became a big part of my life for a really long time. And I constantly felt like it was taking away from me spending the time making things, that I was somehow sacrificing my desires to create by stopping to spend time educating others. And what I didn't realize in that is it wasn't a sacrifice at all. It was me serving the people that I've been called to serve. And just like now, I think in this last year too, I moved into this space almost a year ago now, almost exactly a year ago now. And I chose it because it was larger and I wanted to begin having sort of small scale workshops just for people in the community. And, you know, here we are because we're in California. That just hasn't even been a possibility legally speaking. Not that it would be comfortable to do it regardless, even if it were possible. But yeah, I really had to stop and rethink, like, what am I doing with all of this space then? How am I operating here? Who am I selling to all of a sudden if I'm not out there? You know, a couple of stores that I was selling in closed. If I had like a trunk show lined up or an art fair to go to, that was canceled. So all of a sudden I had this extra space that wasn't being used. And I had this jewelry that I was creating to sell to no one. And so trying to like pivot to online sales and doing things kind of out of desperation, I found not crazy desperation, but just, you know, relatively speaking, finding myself saying yes to projects I would have previously said no to. And thinking that I was doing that out of being in sort of like a needy place. But I found that after that was done, not that it's finished, right? But like, I feel like this year is kind of, and by this year, I mean last year in its sad continuance, is kind of wrapping up, right? And so I feel as though I'm maybe approaching a back to normal sort of scenario. But these projects that I said yes to last year, normally I would have said no to. And I viewed that originally as sort of, again, like me making a consolation or a sacrifice just to continue a steady income stream, right? But what I didn't realize is how I was serving people in doing these things that I normally never would have done. So like your necklace, for example, is probably something I would have been like, Kristen, you can find something like that on Etsy, you know? And instead saying yes, and not only blessing you in that process, but then realizing how much it blesses me every time I see you wear, like every single Instagram post with your pretty face, there's this necklace on, right? And so I didn't realize like how much that would be a full circle scenario for me too. Being able to just see, I mean, it's always a joy when you see somebody wearing something that you made. Yeah. But then to see somebody who like isn't just wearing it, like they fully committed to it being a part of their body on a daily basis, you know, feels really good. And so thinking now that was a sacrifice in some way is just ridiculous. Right. And it was really just a way of me serving others and then ultimately being blessed in return.
Well, I certainly have been blessed through wearing it, but I think more, it's been such a joy just being your friend and kind of going along with you in this process. Like I remember many conversations at the coffee bar at church, and on Thursday mornings after your Bible study, or or conversations on the leather couch where we were like talking through some of this very early phase of you transitioning into this, and just seeing how our personalities are just like totally opposite. And I'm like, we could do this and this as though I were a part of it. And
I'm doing none of that. I'm sitting in the corner alone.
You're doing this. But like, I've just loved watching that process. And it's been such an honor to kind of be like witness to it, just bearing witness to the fact that you are trying new things and doing new things and you're excelling at it. But also seeing how God has met you in the process and has shaped you and molded you and invited you into things that you maybe otherwise would not have touched with a 20-foot pole, 50-foot pole. Is that fair? I mean, right? Sure. Like,
or more, 20 feet or more.
Yeah. Not even on the same plane. But just kind of watching you embrace the changes of the past year and how that has grown you. And I think also just as a friend, I've watched your confidence grow and your repertoire has grown, like, not because you're going to do those things all the time, but just seeing you just grow in your own confidence of what you're capable of doing. So,
and I think, it's really tough as a creative, and I'm sure you know this too, it's that constant voice of self-doubt in your head, right? When you're putting your art out there for people, it's more than just a product, right? When you're writing, you're putting more out there than just like a little snippet for people to read. It's something that you've worked on. It comes from inside of you. It is part of your being, right? When you're making something. And I just feel like anytime that you are just laying it out there for everybody, it's a challenge. It's a challenge for someone like you who is a people person, right?
Yep.
As a number 8, and you're like one of those connector people. So like I've gotten referrals from you to like create for other people too. So I feel like you're one of those wonderful connectives that knows people and just has all of these relationships and brings people together. And so I think if it's hard for somebody like you, it's painful for someone like me who's just, I'm in my little cave and I'm alone, which is fine by me. And I'd prefer not even to do this right now. I would prefer not to, I'd prefer not to have to talk about it.
Yeah.
I prefer not to have to engage, but I think this is healthy. This is good. This is me being participatory.
Right. We've talked so much about that. I think what you're describing though is the process of making yourself vulnerable, um,
Mm-hmm.
in the presence of other people. In the presence of God, you're putting uh, what you have been given out on display for people to respond to. So whether
Mm-hmm.
that's jewelry or whether that's work, like written work. I mean, you've written too. I loved that piece you did just recently on
Yeah. The
sustainable
blog.
gold,
Yeah.
but when you put something out there, people are going to respond to it. And that's a very vulnerable process. And so I commend you for doing that and for being here and being introduced to my friends and their friends. And so it's honor. It's an honor to have you here with me and to just kind of get to do life with you. I just think it's so neat that we like met several years ago and have connected so much. So
Yeah.
I love it. So where can people find you in case they want to take a potential future workshop possibly in that studio right
Yeah.
now, or if they want to purchase some of your jewelry, maybe one of those medallions inspired
Yeah.
pieces. They're so beautiful, you guys. And we didn't even get to talk about like this recycled jewelry project that she just did. I mean,
Yeah.
we'll link
Those
to
are
those
like
things. There's
so
just
many other
so
conversations. Yeah.
totally. But where
But
can they
yeah,
find you?
so most of my stuff I post on Instagram, which is Doris Jean Design. And my website has most of our stuff up there. So that's also dorisjeandesign.com. I'm on Facebook too, but not in an intended way.
Yeah. It's there. Find her on Instagram really is where she's at. So
Yeah. Lots of
okay.
video, yeah, lots of pictures, lots of videos, lots of behind the scenes sort of thing. For all of the lifelong learners out there, you can kind of get an idea of what's going on that way. So
Sweet. Well, thanks for taking some time with me today. This has been a fun conversation and I know it's a little bit longer than probably my other ones are, but I don't care because like this has been a really great conversation. And I think a lot of people will really appreciate getting to know you and a little bit behind the scenes of what it means to be a goldsmither, but also a Jesus follower. So thanks for being with me today.
yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome.
Okay.